This is a weird episode. Let's just start the thing there. We're having technical problems all over the place. Matt, you have to jump on a flight in, 30 minutes now or something like that? But it doesn't matter because we are all here. So, Matt, where are you? Number one, let's start there.
Me, I'm in Johannesburg, South Africa. I'm trying to get to Cape Town this evening so I can get into meetings tomorrow by 8 a.m. And yeah, I'm having technical difficulties galore.
I absolutely love that because it's hilarious to me, number one, when things don't work, because every single time I get on a Zoom call or a Teams call or some other weird software call, something just doesn't work right anymore because you're just jumping through all these different hoops. But today's kind of a weird one. If it's cool with the two of you guys, I kind of want to do this a little bit differently today. So when we're talking about Sage, obviously Sage Intacct is it's the flagship. That's what everybody knows Sage for, Sage Intacct, right? And there's so many of these companies out there that are trying to evaluate their software, knowing, what do I need to make a change? How do I do it? How do I implement it? What's the right choice for me? All that kind of stuff. So I thought it would be kind of cool, honestly, to walk through, some of the signs of why am I in the market for new software? What kind of pieces should I be looking at when I'm evaluating these software choices? And then who should I use to either implement or purchase it, whether it's a VAR or somebody else out there in the marketplace? Just kind of helping some of these entities out there that either need help streamlining their accounting software or some type of support system in place to try to figure it out. Okay, if I'm going to enter this thing, how am I going to start? And subsequently, it's kind of cool because it'll also help all those VARs out there, anybody else in that Sage ecosystem who's selling this stuff, really try to get in mind of some of these buyers. So if that works for you guys, Emily, do you want to maybe just give everybody, we've talked about Sage Intacct a lot already, but just a 100,000 foot overview of what Sage Intacct really is?
Yeah. No, I think you did a good job. Sage Intacct is Sage's standout product. That's where they're putting all their R&D dollars right now. Sage Intacct is cloud-based. It's best in class, so it's able to connect out to other systems and really build an environment that works best for not only the accounting team, but every other team as well, because it's able to connect in. And yeah, there were tons of dollars being spent on AI within Sage Intacct, which I'm excited to. I think we'll touch on that a little bit today or in another episode. So look for that.
I love that. And Matt, this one is kind of more up your alley, I think, because this is quite literally what you do day in and day out. It's what your whole entity does. It's why you're in South Africa right now. So let's just go on a limb and pretend I'm a rube. I know nothing about, I'm running a construction company or something goofy that I know nothing about accounting. All right.
Well, I was going to start with, are we pretending? But you don't run a construction company, so I'm pretending now.
I don't, but let's pretend that I don't know what I'm talking about. Like let's stretch everyone's imagination. Okay, and get to that point that I have no clue about anything accounting related. So if you were to kind of come in and talk to me and evaluate my business, Matt, you're like, all right, I want to pitch these guys. I want to get them on board. I think they'd be a great client. How would you kind of start that process? Like where would that conversation begin?
Well, I mean, interestingly enough, the conversation starts before the conversation, right? It's understanding the audience that you're talking to. I don't want to pretend that there isn't work that goes into understanding your buyer before you ever speak to that buyer. So understanding the industry, understanding the size of the organization, understanding who in the organization you're talking to. Am I talking to the owner? Am I talking to the CFO? Am I talking to the controller? And when it comes to the industry, what that industry's pain points look like the most. So let's pick an industry that I actually know. Construction is not one of them. Actually, I know it, but not when it comes to Intacct in a detailed way. So don't hold me there. But I know most of them. So Doug, give me this hypothetical mode. You are the what of what type of company?
Ooh, boy, I will be the owner of, let's say, a U.S. based manufacturing company.
You went manufacturing. You're kidding.
You know what? I love. You're like, I know all this stuff. I throw two at you and you don't know them.
Well, I don't do construction.
I throw two at you and you don't.
Manufacturing in the U.S.
Don't
Okay,
know them.
Matt, I will throw you one.
Okay,
I am the CFO of a healthcare organization, but I specialize in assisted living.
Wait, in your scenario, you're not even the CEO. No, she's the CEO. That you want to be the CEO of this,
okay,
because that's where the conversation's starting, and then you can move down to the CFO.
Well, this is great. I have a call at 10:30 p.m. my time here in South Africa, with the direct sales reps about an assisted living organization. So,
Oh my
Emily,
god.
thank
It's like
you.
I'm in
Something
your
that you know.
computer.
Yeah. Wow. It
So
took
thank you. Now, questions I start off with. I like to understand how many employees, how many residents. When we talk about assisted or assisted living, do we have independent living with it? What is the makeup of your organization? How many entities are we talking about? And what products are you using today, Emily?
So I use QuickBooks right now to manage my accounting, along with Point Click Clear for my EMR,
Okay.
and I have about 150 employees across 5 different states,
5 states, all one entity?
all one entity. Yep.
All one entity.
But I'm looking at potentially growing.
Potentially growing. Okay. So currently you're using QuickBooks to get this done. And what are the biggest pain points that you have in QuickBooks?
Well, reporting is definitely an issue.
Okay.
So all my locations are kind of just jumbled, and I can't really get an accurate reading across all of my different locations because I'm across 5 states. There's a lot of manual entry going on. So I am rekeying information from PCC to QuickBooks. That's taking up a lot of my team's time, as well as just I want to be able to get timely information out of QuickBooks and into my stakeholders' hands, and it's so far behind I can't catch up.
Great. And tell me a little bit about your team makeup. You're the CFO. How many people work in your department?
I have about 7 people working under me right now.
Okay. And payroll? You're using ADP or a different product? What does that look like?
I'm actually doing that out of QuickBooks today.
You're doing payroll out of QuickBooks. So
I'm a trooper.
you're a trooper and you're spending a lot of time in Excel, I guess, trying
Yeah,
to.
you read my mind.
So look, we're gonna stop this sort of the silly back and forth in the conversation. But what I had the opportunity to do there, Doug, was to really understand where the organization stands today. So we have a pretty sophisticated organization. We talk about 150 employees over 5 different states, especially in the healthcare. And we didn't even get into whether they're dealing in Medicaid and Medicare. We're not talking about whether they're dealing in private pay or insurance specific coverage. We're we're starting to understand the picture of the organization and from a finance side, what's causing them a lot of pain points. We know that QuickBooks, I'm going to assume it's QuickBooks Online. I didn't ask the question, but we're going to assume it's QuickBooks Online. We know that one, we can't import data. So their EHR is sitting outside of their accounting system, and it's not talking to their accounting system, which means that either they're bringing the data in a mass journal entry kind of blanket way without having a lot of detail, or they're not importing, or they're manual keying a lot of information, not just from a journal entry. We also know that they're using QuickBooks Payroll, which with 150 employees is a huge undertaking and a huge risk when it comes to compliance from a payroll, plus benefits management, onboarding of new employees, things of all of this nature. When they were 50 employees in maybe one location, it was not a big deal. This was an organization that lived in QuickBooks and thrived in QuickBooks and probably had an accounting team of 2 to manage that. Maybe a third, for accounts payable and receivable, controller, that CFO that really reported up. And the reason they're talking to me today is probably they're talking to me as a Sage Intacct solution provider, but they're also probably talking to NetSuite. They're probably talking to Microsoft Dynamics as well. And they're trying to assess which one of us is going to best solve those pain points. Pain points being, how do we get a system that talks between the 3 main products that we talked about, the PCC, the payroll, and the GL back end, but also gives me ability to do customized reporting within my system, eliminate the need to pull the data out and to extract that and use pivot tables in Excel and go into what I call Excel hell. And I probably talked about that in previous podcasts, and manage all of my reporting there. And then they're probably also dealing with the fact that they want to be true GAAP accrual compliant. And the way that QuickBooks works is it doesn't allow for that. It doesn't really allow for what we call subledger close into the GL. And so what This CFO has identified as a very inefficient accounting function with limited data sets and a very manual process. And if I want to expand from 5 to 10 locations, and maybe I want to split those locations into entities from a legal structure perspective, I don't have the infrastructure that I need. And why intact in that moment? And the question, and that's the question that's trying to be answered, saying, why am I going to invest from going from QuickBooks Advanced, probably what they're in today, which has a what would be an $1,800 price tag, to Sage Intacct. And if we just went with kind of, I'm thinking dynamic allocations with project tracking for the dimension and so forth, probably closer to a $20,000 a year system. The question is why? Why are they going to see a value into that system? And public service announcement, I'm not actually pricing this in my head, so I'm probably way off of my numbers, but I want to talk about it, the big difference in price we're going to from a.
Yeah, you're just ballparking it. Yeah.
I'm not even ballparking it. I'm just giving
Yeah,
I'm
I
just
know.
using an
Some
example.
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That was shockingly more eloquent than I imagined it being, your explanation. But
Yeah, that was
along the way, I did
beautiful.
hear a couple acronyms that I don't believe were fully explained. So I had EHR, GAP, and GL as acronyms that were used, which were not fully explained, and I don't think we've explained any of those in the past. Emily, am I wrong there?
I don't think I'll dock in for GL. It's pretty
Okay,
self-explanatory.
we'll give you a pass on GL. So EHR and GAP, I know we have not covered either one of those.
General
So
accounting,
Matt,
generally accepted accounting policies, principles.
principles. Yep, there you go. Yeah.
EHR is electronic medical health records. So really that's an acronym that's used for a multitude of products out there. It's really how medical practices, it doesn't matter whether you're in a assisted living or you're in a primary care clinic, behavioral, so forth, dentist, go on and on. That's where your HIPAA compliant data is going to live. Now,
Mhm.
let me just say, Sage Intacct has their HIPAA compliant advanced audit capabilities, and so you can bring in HIPAA data into Intacct. But sometimes there's not a big point in doing so. And what you do is you only bring in the non-HIPAA financial information through a connection between the two. Thank you for that. What I think is important from an acronym thing is that I'm not speaking outside of what people are know in the marketplace. So that being said, the whole concept here of what is Sage Intacct, it is a product that allows for easy integration, whether that's import of data and the ability to find products in the marketplace that really expand its own capability as a general ledger product.
No, I like that. That actually makes a shockingly a high amount of sense from you, which I appreciate that. And you mentioned if they're evaluating Sage Intacct as a potential solution, they're likely evaluating 2, 3 other opportunities as well to really figure out what that fit is. Emily, this is kind of where you live, really helping people figure out what is that best fit, good, bad, ugly of each option out there in the marketplace. So, is there any kind of checklist, let's say unofficial checklist, since we're the unofficial Sage podcast, that any organization who thinks they need to start evaluating some of these tools out there in the marketplace, whether it be Sage or some of these other competitors that Matt mentioned, is there any kind of checklist that they can kind of start with to go, okay, here are the core pieces I should really be thinking about as I go through this process of evaluating these tools?
Yeah, no, there definitely is. So you're right. I work in this space all the time, helping companies evaluate Intact, and I've seen a lot of different things in the time that I've been doing this. So I kind of want to take it before you start talking to competitors and organizations, because that's where I think the work begins. So I kind of have 6 steps that I want to talk through. The first being, gather requirements. You're probably already doing this when you're working in QuickBooks or various other systems. You think to yourself, man, it would be better if my system did this. Or, man, it would be better if I had a cloud-based system because I'm tired of logging onto a server. You're probably already thinking about those things, but just write them down. I think that's probably the first thing. And then the second is, in a team meeting, ask your team, because they're having thoughts as well during their different AP processes, their AR processes, that you may not know about it, because they don't tell you. So just ask. Once you kind of have a list of, okay, I'm looking for XYZ, and this is kind of what I want to stay in budget, go ahead and rank those. So having a cloud-based solution may be higher than having a system that has a payroll function inside the system. Because it's very hard to find what we call the unicorn in systems. You're really not going to find a system that can do everything you need to. What's done nowadays is just being able to connect in other systems so that you can kind of do that. So go ahead and identify your top priorities, rank them. And through that, you kind of create a requirements matrix. And it's going to look and feel kind of how you look and feel. But you're going to provide this to your team and say, what do you think about this? You're going to get their feedbacks, make changes if need to. But what you're going to have by the end of that is a document it has everything you're looking for, and so that you can start researching your options. So the easiest place to go is online, but that is a scary, scary place. So there are a couple of sources that we recommend that you look at, like G2, Trust Radius. These are two sites that you'll hear me talk about a lot, but that's where end users can go out and put reviews and comments on software. Also, I think a really underutilized group that you can talk to is your trusted advisors. So your CPAs. They've seen a lot of accounting systems, and they can kind of give their recommendations onto what accounting system they might think you should use. As well as talk to your friends, your groups. I know down here in Louisiana, we have a CFO, controller accounting group, that people get together. They talk about all things accounting, and systems is one of them. So once you kind of have that, then you can start excluding options. So if you're looking for a system that does really well in project accounting, okay, you can scratch off. You can scratch off the ones that don't. So then you kind of have a short list of 3 or 4. And then you engage with shortlist solutions. So you've done your research, you kind of know what you're talking about. Provide the matrix to them so that they can see what you're looking for. It'll make it a lot easier, and you have to evaluate them. And unfortunately, this is a long part of the process, because if your shortlist is 3 or 4, then you're sitting in 3 or 4 demos, 3 or 4 discoveries, 3 or 4 proposal review calls. So you're going to have to put in the time, but if you think about it, putting in this time now is going to help you and save you time later, because you're not doing manual work anymore. You are in a system that works for you instead of against you.
That's actually helpful. I'm curious. There's really probably not a lot of statistics or metrics around this, but how much of the buying process do you think is really done before any one of these providers is even contacted directly? I mean, with all the different sites out there, like you mentioned, G2 and Trust Radius, how much of that process do you think is really done to that point once they start contacting people directly?
I would say probably 80%.
Oh, that's high.
I get the feel that a lot's weeded out, but I see NetSuite so frequently up against Intact that I think that a lot of buyers, unless they've used the products before, sometimes get on the fence between the two of them. Now, I don't even see Microsoft Dynamics or Business Central as frequently by any means, but I've had a couple deals go sideways and go to NetSuite over a very specific functionality that NetSuite had, even though we know that functionality is no different than what Intact has, but the way that they sold it. And I've seen us sway from NetSuite to Intact because of the education process within the demo. I mean, I've been on 7 or 8 scoping calls since being here in South Africa, just as an example. And it's really interesting to me the different personas of the buyers and what their knowledge base is, and what they glean on when we're going through that. I had one CFO of a nonprofit organization who is purchasing Intact for the first time, coming out of QuickBooks, and they didn't understand the grant tracking and billing module, understand what it really solved for them. They were living in Excel and everything else. And I was able to get on and talk them through what that value was. and that shifted their whole buying decision kind of in that moment. I remember one that I lost, and it was on the financial services side, and NetSuite did something really kind of smart, even though it's no different than what we can do in Intact, but created a deal module basically. And this was a fund. So this was a kind of a wealth management organization that had funds, and they were specialty funds, and they had to track deals because not all funds come to fruition, but you have costs that go into those, and you have to take and reallocate those that costing. And in fact, the solution that we had would have been more eloquent, but it wasn't named in the same way, and the way that NetSuite demoed it shifted the deal over to NetSuite. And it was a shame. So as a long-winded answer to say, I've seen a lot of people on the fence when it comes to those two products. Now I've also seen, and where Emily's coming from, I have one right now for an organization in the general business area. I don't want to give it away because it's such a small little niche industry group in which the entire team is ex Intacct users. So they're on here. Go. We know Intacct. We want Intacct. There's not another player in the game. We just need to make sure that you can actually integrate to the specialty software that that we have. So it's hit or miss in some ways.
Yeah, no, it definitely is hit or miss, but I think, the process I just explained is a good process for
Oh yeah,
evaluating the vendor. What is equally as important is evaluating your implementation partner.
absolutely. No, I think the implementation partners that do the best can describe what they're actually achieving in that implementation and how
Mhm.
they're going to support. I mean, you probably see it, Emily. The biggest question that you run into in the implementation is, talk to me about support. We go live when we're transitioning. What are we getting from you in a support mentality or a support function? And it's not just user acceptance testing when it comes to a go live component. It is truly the transition training that people are looking for a lot of times from in their accounting department.
It's that, and they've gotten burned in the past of using QuickBooks or Microsoft GP, and they don't have any support. So what happens if something breaks? What do? Where they get stuck?
It's amazing that the biggest players in every single technology vertical are just horrible on support. I do find that just the most ironic thing in the world. But that's a whole separate conversation. You guys both mentioned kind of the buying process, both for the vendor side and for the implementation side. Matt, you mentioned the buyer persona a little bit. I'm curious for everyone listening, how many decision makers, on average, understanding the size of the company can really sway this? How many decision makers are usually involved in choosing a vendor and or an implementation partner?
No more, no less than two. I've seen upwards of 10 decision makers in the process.
And these are people that, I'm sorry, Matt. These are people that can be CFOs, controllers, owners. I've seen a lot more recently technology people becoming a part of my deal, and they are probably 60% always bringing in
Now,
Microsoft
technology,
365.
Emily, are you referring to like CIOs
Like
or
CIOs,
like
yep.
Yeah.
CTO? You know what? Okay, got it.
Those are the ones that always
That's
kind of
helpful.
worry me when they come in, because then they start asking me things about servers. I'm like, this is a cloud-based product. Did you want to talk about single sign-on? What are we talking about? I don't. But yeah, I mean, the CIOs are definitely, because on the bigger organizations, Emily, I assume that you're seeing them come in and really being involved in that integration process, especially with products that aren't on the marketplace, and wanting to help make sure that that is fully vetted as a process and not overlooked. We
Right,
had
and they're asking for things like the SOC 2 report, which I'm more than happy to send them. And then here recently, I actually got on a call with Sage, myself, and a couple other individuals from the IT team, and we got into the weeds about the servers that Sage is hosted on. What is their disaster recovery processes? So it's getting pretty advanced, and I think it was a couple of years ago.
well, I mean, I think a previous episode we brought Eric Nielsen in from Data Blend, and I see in the deals that he gets involved in, Emily, you probably see them too, that far more likely to bring in their technology side of the house when we start getting into those level of implementations.
Yep. Speaking of him, I just got an email from him.
I was on the phone right before this with him in a deal. It was a 10-minute call, which is good because we should be hearing. But yep, he seems to always be around.
He is always around.
Yeah, he's just he's a lurker, I guess. So, kind of moving through the buying process here. In a previous life, I sold enterprise SaaS solutions, software as a service. You're not getting me there, Matt. And I was pitching a pretty comprehensive product to a relatively smaller entity at the time. And I got to the end of the sales process with this guy, and he said, "You know what? I don't need an 18-wheeler to move my 1-bedroom apartment." That was his analogy. He said, "This software is just too complex for me. It's too big. It's more than I need to run my sized entity." And you know what? It probably made sense at the time. Pissed me off at the time, but yeah, he was probably right. But that kind of stuck with me. So, kind of moving back to that top of the funnel, what are really good targets? What are really good fits for someone where Sage Intacct could be a great solution for them? Do either of you see any kind of common trends, like really common pain points in some of these industries or verticals, period, that are great fits for Sage Intacct? Sizes. What are they struggling with? What are some of the pre-sales components that you would really want to understand about a potential client if you were going to implement or sell them Sage Intacct?
I don't want to be a broken record because I think we've talked about this before, but multiple entity, living in Excel, is the two main things that you see that you're solving. Legacy software that's on a server, it's not cloud-based. That's number 3. I'm hoping that we're seeing less and less in that because of the adoption of cloud-based solutions in the marketplace. I mean, those are kind of your major things. You want to get into industry specific components. Again, nonprofit, when you talk about grant tracking and the ability to take care of that, HIPAA compliance in healthcare, like we mentioned. Emily, you can speak on the CRE and side of things, and where that really comes into play.
Yeah, the CRE function. I would also have to say, hospitality industry, the general business, anyone who needs project accounting, Sage Intacct is really good for. They runs the gamut, but I think Sage Intacct is a good fit for mid-market companies, right? This isn't a small mom and pop. This is a relatively expensive system, and you're also going to have to invest in the system, but invest in the implementation. So they're going to be two cost.
So you said mid-market companies there, Emily, and I'm sorry to cut you off there, Matt, but I want to clarify that for everybody listening, because everyone has a different idea in their head of what an SMB or small mid-sized business kind of market is. Just from a revenue perspective, can you define kind of what you would say is really that middle market or medium-sized business?
Yeah. So it's taking everything Matt said. Like, if you're having those problems and it's different for everybody, but I would say the lowest 5 million and up. It just depends. If you're having the problems that Matt, just said, and you're a $3 million business, but you're willing to invest in software, then that's a different story. And I'm a salesperson, and I hate saying it just depends.
I will say that I'm seeing more and more adoption going downstream into what you'd even call the higher tier of SMB. I really try to talk to prospects about, am I allowed to say this? Size doesn't matter. It really is. I say that for you, Doc. I say that for you.
That's I appreciate that. But that'll be a separate episode. We can, yeah.
But and all jokes aside, the pain points and the investment of time and resources of getting information out of your accounting system, the cost of it from a manual labor and informative or information perspective is really what can drive that decision making. But we only scratch the surface. It's one of the most underutilized, in my opinion, modules that Intacct offers is dynamic allocations. Many organizations that have costs that they allocate, whether between departments, locations, entities, or other metrics that they do manually in spreadsheets that Intact can actually fully automate. And it's something that actually NetSuite can't do, does not do well. NetSuite stops basically at what we call transaction allocations, which is sort of saying, hey, here's a percentage and go do it. Dynamic allocation says, hey, we're going to put a statistical account in for square footage that changes for every event. And every time, and we're going to tell it to give us a calculation of cost to square foot or revenue to square foot. And I don't even like to use the word square, the analogy square foot, because it's more of a fixed item. But let's think about if you're using time as a metric point for allocations, or if you're looking at gross profit or net income, or a dollar amount that changes and is variable. And now we're actually changing that from how we allocate our costs into those different cost pools. I mean, this level of automation and then reporting. And let's think about this when we talk about being competitive as a business or organization, whether you're a nonprofit or a for-profit, and you have information that allows you to, at a moment's notice, know exactly how profitable you are within your cost centers, within your projects, within your whatever it is that you're tracking, your grants, your dimensions. So that right there is something where I could have a $2 or $3 million firm that needs to know that level of granularity in order to make the decisions to invest in certain things. And it's well worth the money. So we as implementers and we as partners have to evaluate what that client's need is and then bring them the solution. And I'm happy to say you should stay in QuickBooks, but I'm also happy to say, yeah, you might feel like you only need that QuickBooks apartment, but guess what? You're operating like mid-market house. I just think that's really important to emphasize in these conversations.
And you brought up a good point, Matt. When I'm talking to prospects, sounds like you do as well. If they're not a fit for that semi, I'm going to tell them, because at the end of the day, I want you to be happy. I want us to be happy because we're in a long-term relationship.
Yep. Yep.
That's shocking. We didn't even plan that out, but that kind of segues into my last kind of question for both of you. It's really quick, nice and easy. What do you both see as the top two competitors that Sage knocks out? So when people are looking to reevaluate the current systems, they bring in Sage and Sage wins those contracts. What are the top two competitors in that world that are usually knocked out of the gate?
Top two competitors are knocked out of the gate. I mean, we see a ton of QuickBooks conversions. We see a ton up against NetSuite. Look, there's only really three players in that, what we would call mid-market solution. Okay. And they're always coming against each other. I think the question, I hate to say, is, what are the industries that Intact wins and hands over fist always? And the top three is nonprofit, healthcare, and SaaS. Sorry, I don't live in the software as a service world as of yet. But those are your three number one industries within Intact. Now, what's incredible is the investment that Emily talked about earlier, and where they're going for the other industries and how they're becoming market leaders in the other industries, and how they're starting to win consistently in the other industries as much as they win in those top three, really speak to where the product is going and where we as solution providers will be able to have those type of conversations in those industries that we do in the top tier industries, because we're still winning. If you go to general business, and I do a lot of work with the general business team, and I hate the name of it because it kind of doesn't talk about all the intricacies that go into it. Intact is winning more and more and more.
Emily, a rebuttal to Matt there?
Not necessarily a rebuttal, but I think we've talked about a lot this episode. We've talked what Sage's strengths are, where it lies in multiple entities, where it lies of getting you out of Excels, where it lies in just having integrations exist. You're not having to rekey information. Um, so as far as other solutions, there isn't a lot of players in the games. I do find that Microsoft 365 gets knocked out pretty quick because it doesn't have the functionality that I think CFOs and accounting teams are looking for. And it's normally a one-to-one with Intacct and NetSuite. But I think, as someone who is looking at software, you need to take your time. You need to evaluate systems based on your needs, but also your budget. And just know that if they say they're offering a free implementation, ask yourself, is that really free?
Yeah. Well, there's no such thing as a free lunch, right?
Mm.
Yeah. Same with any software provider out there in the world. I think that's a good place to wrap. We covered a lot there, and kind of the buying process, start to finish here, which honestly is something I find shockingly exciting, and I'm not even joking there. That's kind of cool. I'm weird when it comes to that stuff. So Matt, you have to hop on a plane here in a moment, if I'm not mistaken. So I want to cap it with a horrible joke for you to just think about the whole way. Oh boy, let's see. What do we got today? Oh, okay, I got one. How do you know that your clock is still hungry?
Oh no, I suck at these.
I don't got time to think this through right now. I got to go. What is it?
It goes back 4 seconds.
I will
hungry
never
clock.
think through that.
Oh yeah, you will. Yeah, that'll be a good one. Or we can wrap it there, and everyone can just bask in how great that one was. And it'll just keep getting better next week. So, thanks for listening again, everybody. Matt, Emily, we will see you again next week.
Bye, everybody.